Yo, what's going on, y'all? This is Relaxing OG Jackson and Big Cozy, and we're back yet again for another episode 4. And we are here and back in effect, and we are talking about good old MMA UFC events. How are you doing, Lau?
I'm doing good, man. Shouts out to the listeners. What's up? We're here, the Highly Advised MMA episode 4. We're coming here live and direct and try to provide some good contact for the listeners and for the viewers. And before we continue and get the show on a roll, we would like all you guys to follow us on Highly Advised Podcast on Instagram, Advise Highly on Twitter, and make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube at the Highly Advised Podcast.
So, with that being said, how was your week before we get into the reviews of these cards? Like, how was your week? How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing all right. Can't complain. Last week was pretty freaking busy. It looks like this week is going to be another busy week, but that's what happens when you're trying to, become successful and do your shit. You know what I mean? So
Of course. This week was a little less busy for me. As you know, I was just doing a lot of studying, and the reason for that studying has came to an end, thank God. So we got to get to the beginning of March, and we got to enjoy a very good UFC card, talking about UFC 285. Do you have any general thoughts about this card? Well, before you say that, I'll give my thoughts. And that is that this card is one of the better cards in the UFC that we've gotten probably in like the last few months, I would say. This card is pretty damn good. Like all of the fights were relatively entertaining. Most of them ended in finishes, I think, except for one. And also the stakes were high, surprises, definitely some good fights. I enjoyed 285 quite a bit. I think I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 off the top of my head.
I think I would give it a little higher. I would say a 9 out of 10, the whole card as a whole. Honestly, I can't. There might have been like one or two dud fights. Actually, I have the card pulled up right now, listeners, and yeah, about like two dud fights where there are fights that it's okay if you don't watch them type of deal.
Right.
No knock on the fighters, but they just weren't entertaining fights, and I mean that very respectfully.
So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into it. Do you have anything to say about the prelims before we get to the main card?
Yeah, actually 3 fights in particular. It's good to see Amanda Ribas. Well, actually 4 fights. Shouts out to Tabitha Ritchie. I feel like that's a woman that everybody should keep their eye on. She was impressive. She scored a finish. Amanda Ribas, is good to see her finally getting back on track. So I think her next fight is going to be definitely a top contender fight. I'm not gonna lie, man. I feel kind of bad for Derek Brunson because he's at the tail of his career. Honestly, I think he should take one more fight as a retirement fight and try to go out on, try his best to go out on a win. But I think his title run days are officially over. And Cody Garbrandt, we see that he went back. He's finally back in the win column. But honestly, he might be the same boat as Derek Brunson, where, hey, he should probably go out on a retirement tour or something, because I don't think he could compete at the same level as he did years ago. I think it's just too many injuries, being concussed so many times for being knocked out. And I'm not trying to be funny or disrespectful, but it's just like really, it's kind of like a Tua situation for Miami. So, yeah, those were the 4 things I want to say about the prelims.
When I was watching the Cody Garbrandt fight, and, he won the fight for sure. It wasn't the most impressive win that he's ever had. But that being said, he got a win. And I think for like the first win in like 2 or 3 fights, excluding the win he had in between, the knockouts that he had, good for him that he was able to get into the win column. Honestly, if I was Cody Garbrandt, I would consider retirement because, to me, watching him fight, the competition will not get much easier than Trevin Jones. That's just a fact. So with that being said, I agree with you. Cody Garbrandt Derek Brunson, shouts out to them, but I think it just might be that time. I don't really have much else to say. I think you covered the other stuff from the prelims. With that being said, let's get into the main card for 285.
Yep, yep.
Now, we started off with Bo Nickel versus Jamie Pickett. There's a little bit of controversy in the fight. People thought he need Jamie Pickett in the nuts before
Yeah.
the takedown and eventual finish. To me, I don't necessarily have much of a problem with the way things went, whether he got kneed or not, because I feel like this was going to be a foregone conclusion of the fight. I think at some point in time, he was going to get him down. I think at some point in time, he was going to finish him on the ground, whether that be TKO or submission. Jamie Pickett was not going to defend multiple takedowns from Bo Nickel in my head. He could have, I could be wrong, but that didn't happen. So as far as I know, they are trying to go and I think battle the conclusion of that fight. I think they're trying to go to the commission, but
Okay.
I don't think that's necessarily going to change anything. I think that Bo Nickel just went in there and performed.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on that. It's unfortunate that he got low blowed on the way down, but I think that was one of the easiest fights to predict. I predicted a first round submission. I just felt like the UFC chose an opponent that's fitting for Bo Nickel's style, and they weren't trying to, in my opinion, the UFC wasn't trying to test the Bo Nickel mantle. I think they were trying to put the machine behind him so the world could see, oh, look at the new kid on the block, look at the new guy on the block, Bo Nickel. And so shouts out to Bo Nickel because he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
Right.
The low blow is unfortunate. I think that was kind of a thing of unfortunate circumstance. I don't think it was like he purposely did it. I don't think he needs to cheat to beat Jamie Pickett.
Exactly.
But with that being said, I don't know if I'm necessarily impressed because he beat a guy that he was supposed to beat. And I understand, I'm not saying throw him to the wolves. No, because he's not like a Hamzat or anything where you could tell right away, oh, this guy got it. There's no point of wasting his time. I would like to see Bo Nickel probably fight stiffer competition. Like, once again, I'm not saying like top 10 guy or anything like that. No, not even top 15. Just give him somebody who's a little more stiffer. I would like to see him eventually fight a guy who could wrestle as well. Because if you keep giving him these strikers, of course, he's going to look like a world-class MMA fighter. No, I would like to see him being challenged and shit. So we'll see. And shouts out to Bo Nickel. He did exactly what he's supposed to do, and we're about to see what's next for him.
So next we have the lightweight match between Mateus Gamrot and Jalen Turner. I think this was probably the most 50-50 pick 'em fight on the card as far as the main card. And it was an interesting fight. Mateus Gamrot and Jalen Turner had a good fight. Jalen Turner was able to drop Mateus a couple times, but at the end of the day, his grappling and ground game proved to be just a little bit too much in order to win the game, or I should say the match. So to me, I think you actually predicted that the fight would go somewhat in this way, Lau, if I'm not mistaken. Like, hey, like I think like he's gonna get taken down by Mateus.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't remember when I preview exactly what I said. I
Right.
just remember saying like, hey, this is a 50-50 fight. I'm just gonna go with Jalen Turner off just cause.
Mm-hmm.
And but I also said I'm probably gonna end up regretting it. Now I don't regret it, but at the same time, I kind of knew all right, either Jalen or Gamrot could have won. I thought that fight was a good fight, by the way. It was a good fight. You know what's funny? Even though I picked Jalen Turner off to win off the whim, when I was watching that fight live, I scored it for Gamrot. I thought he edged every round out. I scored a 30-27.
I agree.
Now, people thought that Jalen Turner won, and then there was other people who thought Gamrot won, but they didn't think it was 30-27. They said oh, it was 29-28. I was one of those people who thought it was 30-27. I thought he edged out every round because it was grappling. He used, Gamrot seems to be a fighter that has good IQ under him. He knew, hey, I probably can't really outstrike this guy, so I'm going to have to beat him where I know I could beat him at. And that wasn't easy, as you could see in the fight, but he got the job done. So I think this is a good win for Mateusz Gamrot because he's coming off that loss of Beneil Dariush, but now he's back in the win column. So now he could, fight up again, get another top 10 fight. I think he should probably fight somebody like RDA if RDA is not coming, if he's coming back down to lightweight, or fight the loser of Conor or Chandler. I think that'd be cool too. Or fight the loser of Gaethje and Fiziev. You know what I mean? So
what about Beneil and Charles?
You could fight the loser of that as well. So there's options for Gamrot, and I think all those options are good for him because those fights are people ranked above him, and outside of Conor, of course, but those fights are ranked above him. And if he wins any of those fights, that's just going to boost his stock up and move him up in the rankings. Jalen Turner, he has nothing to hang his head about. He took a short notice fight. He took a gamble, and unfortunately, he just lost his gamble. But I still think that Jalen Turner probably could get a top 10, top 15 fight. He might not get one of the elites, but he'll definitely get a ranked opponent next. And hopefully, he takes his fight back, and he's able to retool his skills and work on the stuff that he was lacking in the Gamrot fight.
Yeah, Jalen Turner definitely doesn't have anything to be sad about in this fight. It's not like he went out there and got destroyed. Like, yeah, he did get beat. But that being said, though, it's a loss that he can learn from, more or less, in my eyes.
Right.
So after that, we had the Shavkat Rakhmonov Jeff Neal fight. I think a lot of people were looking forward to this fight because of Shavkat. But that being said, people, when they watch this fight, I think they got to give Jeff Neal some credit. He's given Shavkat his toughest fight in the UFC. A lot of people call it his quote unquote Gilbert Burns fight. The fight that he needed to prove that he was tough and he wasn't just a finisher and he can go all 3 rounds and blah, 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 even though he got the finish in the last minute of the last fight. Definitely a tough fight for him. Shavkat, I was listening to Anthony Smith on the MMA Hour. He made a good point. Shavkat just looked very hittable in this fight, more so than any of his fights in the UFC, which is why we wanted him to fight Hamzat. You know what I mean? Because they had a similar style where it seemed like they were just dominating. But that being said, Shavkat won the fight. There was definitely some interesting exchanges on the feet. Jeff Neal definitely stunned him on the feet. I think he caught him in the 3rd round before he got finished. So, it's a fight to me that was more entertaining than, I would say, depleting for either of these fighters. Yep. Jeff Neal definitely can go back and try to get his game more on point. And Shavkat is going to move up and fight a top 5 welterweight. And I would choose between Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not. If Gilbert beats Masvidal, yeah, I agree with you, Gilbert or Covington. That fight was amazing. I think that fight was great. Honestly, I think that fight should be nominated for Fight of the Year so far because that fight was fantastic. I feel like, yes, that was a fight that spectators needed to see just to be like, okay, can he deal with 3 rounds of a tough opponent? I think he passed that test with flying colors. Now, I understand Anthony Smith's opinion, like, oh, well, he's very hittable. I think that the reason why he's very hittable because he went against a guy who could box very well in Jeff Neal. Most of these fighters that's fighting Jeff Neal, they don't really want to stand in front of him and box. Shavkat did that, and that was very impressive to me because he didn't have to do that. He did it. He could have kept spamming takedowns and all that other shit, but he did it. He fought him standing up, then went toe to toe, and unfortunately, Jeff Neal just happened to be the man that didn't get his hand raised at the end. But if you watch the post-fight press conference, Dana said he paid both of them. Even though Jeff Neal missed weight, he paid both of them because he acknowledged what all the other fans acknowledged. That fight was fantastic. That, even though that everybody's probably celebrating Shavkat, you have to give credit to Jeff Neal because he's the other half of that fight that made it fantastic. So I agree with your take on Shavkat. I think Jeff Neal really, why not give him some, once he heals up, of course, why not give him somebody like a Sean Brady? You know what I mean? Or try to give him a little tune up with Michael Chiesa or something like that. So this way, he could get back in the win column and get another top contender fight. Unless the UFC kind of is like, hey, we're going to give him like Jorge Masvidal or something, which would be a crazy fight.
It would be a crazy fight, but I feel like that's the fight just because, hey, you want to give Jorge Masvidal somewhat of a big name. Like, if I'm being real, if Shavkat fights Jorge, he beats him. I think he does him.
I'm talking about Jeff Neal, not Shavkat. Yeah, Shavkat should fight what you suggested, Kobe Covington and Gilbert Burns. I'm saying Jeff Neal, he could fight at Jorge Masvidal.
Who do you have in that fight if they fight?
Jeff Neal.
Okay, Jeff Neal by like finish or Jeff Neal by like a decision? I think he would finish him, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think he would finish him too. I don't think a first round KO, TKO, but I'm thinking like maybe, second round the earliest. For sure, he'll get it done by the third round.
So with that being said, we move on to the championship fights. So we have the co-main event actually that we're moving into. Valentina, the Bullet herself, took on Alexandra Grasso. I don't know her nickname, but
Alexa.
I do know. Say it again.
Alexa Grasso.
Did I say something different?
You said Alexander.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alexa Grasso took on Valentina Shevchenko and finished her and won the belt. This was a crazy fight. From the beginning of the fight, you could tell that this wasn't going to be your average competitor for Valentina Shevchenko. From round 1 until round 4, when the fight was finished, she looked like she was very game and very ready for Valentina in a way that no other woman has looked like since she's got the belt. And
right.
I was very impressed with Alexa Grasso because I'm not going to lie. I didn't think she was going to make it through the whole fight, nonetheless win or get a finish.
Yeah.
You had called it. The one thing that looked distinctly different from her and some of the other chicks was the way that she stood on the feet against Valentina. Like, if you like are watching the fight, you can tell, hey, she had to take her down a few times because she was piecing her up a little bit.
Yeah.
And even the finish of the fight came after a spinning back kick that Alexa Grasso took advantage of, took her down to the ground, and wrapped her arm around her face. And it was a very impressive win, and I can't wait for the rematch.
Yeah, same here. I'm very excited for the rematch. I wonder if the UFC is going to take advantage of all these new Mexican champions and make a UFC Mexico card. I'll definitely tune into that because the Mexican fighters have been turning up lately in the UFC. So kudos to all of them, but really kudos to Alexa Grasso because I didn't pick her to win, but I did feel like the fight was going to be competitive until Valentina won. I thought Valentina was going to win by like a TKO in the 4th round. Kind of find out Valentina is the one that got finished in the 4th round. But I did believe Alexa Grasso should have got more credit prior to the fight happening because I'm like, hey, I think this is going to be a bit more competitive. And the fight showed it was competitive. Yes, I gave that first round to Alexa Grasso, but the next 2 rounds I did give to Valentina because she did utilize her wrestling and her grappling more. But I felt like in that 4th round, Alexa adjusted, and I felt like what she was doing that her coaches told her to do was really to get in closer to kind of to cut away the space of Valentina shooting in on her, which was kind of frustrating her. And that's why she was throwing those sloppy kicks and strikes and stuff like that. And when she threw the spinning thing and Alexa hopped on that and drug her down, I was like, oh, okay, it's probably a wrap because Valentina was kind of struggling to get away from the rear naked. Now, what I would like to say is Daniel Cormier kind of came out recently and said that he was surprised that Valentina was making the same mistakes that she did in the Talia Santos fight. And I think that's interesting because I wonder if that's because Valentina's fighting and winning so much where it's kind of hard for her to adjust her holes in her game because she's won and what's not broken, why fix it, right? But this rematch, we should get a new Valentina. And I think we were going to get a new Alexa too, because if Alexa Grasso's smart, she's not going to come with the same approach in the rematch. She's going to come with a new approach because if not, of course, Valentina is smart enough and she got the IQ to know, like, hey, I'm not falling for this shit again. So, shouts out to both women. They put on a good fight. Congratulations to Alexa Grasso. She knocked it out the park. And I'm also excited to see a rematch.
Who do you have right now before they fight?
Man, that one might be 50-50, man. Because I don't think it's a very competitive fight.
Yeah,
Now I don't want to count out Alexa Grasso. Now I don't want to, but it's very hard to count out Valentina, man. She's the flyweight queen. No longer, but the goat of the women flyweights is Valentina. She's not old, you know what I mean? So I think that's a 50-50 fight as of right now. I think right now I'm leaning a little more towards Valentina, but I feel like that shift could change very easily throughout time. So we'll see later in the year when everything gets booked up.
yeah. So I don't know, man. That fight is going to be interesting. I think that they should do the Volkanovski Rodriguez fight and Grasso Shevchenko fight on the same card.
What
And I mean,
about
shit,
Brandon Moreno?
I was about to say, put Brandon Moreno on there too. Just have them all three defend their belts. Like, make it a big Mexican card.
I was going to say, Mexico, they're going to show out. That pay-per-view might do great numbers in Mexico. You know what I mean?
They're gonna turn the fuck up, man.
Yeah.
Like for that, they are.
Yeah.
So next on the card, of course, last but not least by any means, we had the return of the GOAT, John Jones, and he came in and defeated Ciryl Gane in 2 minutes in the first round. Now, watching this fight was kind of crazy because to me, watching it live, it was interesting to see as to what was going to go on. And I was thinking, all right, is John Jones going to stand up with him at all? Which for the most part, he did not. Like, yeah, a few leg kicks were kind of exchanged between them and like maybe a few punches here and there. But for the most part, this was domination by John Jones. Like he took him down and just worked him. And Ciryl Gane, when he was on the ground, had zero answers for what John Jones threw at him. I was actually kind of surprised because like for him to have just been excluding the Tai Tuivasa fight, but the Francis fight where he got taken down and worked for majority of that fight, you would figure that he's, going back and working some of this stuff, like working the ground game and working trying to get out of this stuff. Now, mind you, it is John Jones, but at the same point in time, like it was very shocking how easy the fight looked for John Jones. To me, like that was, I think, the most crazy part of it. It was so shocking how easy he did it. We didn't even realize how he did it at first. We had to watch the replay and saw that he had his head bent underneath his chest and arm. You know what I mean? So like, I think the debate for John Jones being the GOAT is done. It's over. And I think everybody's acknowledged that. And I'm kind of glad that everybody has acknowledged that because I feel like trying to take away from that statement and what John Jones did on Saturday would be a shame. You know what I mean? Like he accomplished a lot. And I think that even prior to the fight on Saturday, he had accomplished quite a bit. I don't think that there was necessarily much debate prior to the fight. There's damn sure not any debate now that the fight's done. So, congratulations to John Jones. He went out there and performed.
Yeah. I was blown away because I remember watching the fight live. And as soon as he was able to get him in that guillotine and Cyril tap as fast as he did, I was like, the first thing I said was, what? Because I was just like you. I was very surprised that John was able to beat him that fast. Now, if John scored a TKO or a submission in the third or fourth round, I'd be like, okay, I wasn't predicting the finish, but hey, he's the GOAT. But the fact that he did it in the first round, not even like late first round, 2 minutes, I'm like, the guy's the GOAT. And I'm very looking forward to his fight with Stipe in the future. But to talk about the fight itself, I know people are they have like a little bit of criticisms, excuse me. They're saying like, oh, well, John looked a little slow with the striking. I'm like, well, it's 2 minutes. Like, the way I see it is like the dude's coming off a 3-year layoff. So, of course, the ring rust is there. John is just such a special fighter that, even with ring rust or not, he's still going to find a way to get the job done, as he did. And it impressed the hell out of everybody because he got it done quick. And he set the fans home happy because I know the fans, they were all giddy. They're all happy because they're like, damn, I get to go home early.
Yeah,
So anyway,
party.
Yeah, exactly. Cyril Gahn, I'm not gonna lie to you, he shit the bed. He crapped his pants, and I feel like I don't know what went on with his corner and his coaching and his training for the fight, but whatever happened did not reflect in that fight at all. It was kind of like it was either Daniel Cormier or Dana White, one of those two, that said that he got treated like a little kid in there. It is so unfortunate because I thought I didn't think he was going to win the fight, but I thought he was going to be more competitive, especially like in the first 2 rounds. But with that happening, now it's like, damn, like all these other fighters who could wrestle a little bit, now they're going to try to once again, hey, he's vulnerable on the ground. We're going to try to expose that. And I think that what Cyril Gahn should do is take up Habib's offer, because I don't know if you saw that little post where Habib said he's going to offer.
I saw that. Yeah,
yeah.
He should.
Yeah, I agree. He needs to do it. And or B, the team that he's with now, he needs to win them, because they should have worked on his wrestling after the Francis fight.
I agree.
Because as what John said and what everybody else says who watches MMA thoroughly, hey, Francis is a novice level wrestler. Yes, Francis added a new wrinkle to his game, but Francis shouldn't be outworking you in wrestling for 3 rounds in a row. 3 rounds in a row. That was a big glaring hole. Obviously, John saw that, and you saw John was giddy. I'm coming out of retirement.
He was giddy popping.
Yeah. He was walking up there. And then, so I feel like he should have worked on it for the Tattoo Muscle fight. Then he should have worked on it for the John Jones fight. So he definitely needs a change of scenery, because if he stays with the guy that he's with now, and if he stays and he doesn't take up people's offers to help his grappling and his wrestling, telling you, if he's not fighting a striker, he's always going to face this problem, because people are going to be like, well, I'm just going to ankle pick him or single leg and drag his ass down, and I'm just going to do what John did. All right, first round finish. And I feel like it's a very unfortunate for Cyril Gahn, but now, Cyril Gahn, are you happy to be here, or do you want to be a world champion? And if you want to be a world champion, unfortunately, you have to. Now you got to get out of your comfort zone. Now you got to change the way you do things, because the heavyweights right now, especially with John being on top, of course, they all want to be a champion. They're all willing to fight John Jones.
Yeah.
So, and I'm telling you, some of those guys got some grappling, and Cyril, he needs to go back and retool his grappling skills. So hopefully he could do that, because I like Cyril Gahn. I think he's a good fighter, but that night didn't show that at all. So let me ask you a question before we move on from this.
What up?
Early prediction, John versus Stipe.
Short prediction or kind of lengthy?
No, short, because obviously, the fight is not even announced yet.
That's fair. My short prediction for John Jones versus Stipe is a 2nd round submission.
Oh wow, okay. For John, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I don't think this fight. Honestly don't believe that this fight is going to go to decision, because in my mind, some of these people who are at heavyweight aren't as skilled as their lower weight class comparisons. You know what I mean?
Very agreed.
Like Cyril Gahn, for example. You're not going to find a fighter like him at bantamweight. Ever. You're not.
I agree.
You're not going to find a fighter like him at welterweight. The only reason why a fighter like him can exist at heavyweight is because of the way he strikes and the speed he has at heavyweight.
Right.
Like I think that John Jones is skilled enough to get a finish in round two. I'll say round three, but I'm gonna go round two. I want to be a little risky, so
Okay.
why
And
not?
this is just like an early prediction. I'm pretty sure we have an early prediction again once the actual fight
Yeah,
is announced.
yeah. Like so overall with that card, it was cool to watch. We have a fight card coming up on Saturday. This is UFC Fight Night, Jan versus excuse me, Marab Dvalishvili. That's how you pronounce his name. They are fighting in the main event. Lyle, would you like to say anything about this card?
Let me actually pull up this card real quick, right?
All right.
Because I got it right in front of me. As I'm looking at this card, there's actually three fights that really kind of stick out. Well, four, and let me just go ahead and get the fourth one out the way. The Rafael Santos fight is interesting to me, right? Because if this guy David Grant beat Rafael Santos, it might be time for Rafael to hang it up.
Agreed.
Now, Rafael, Rafael, excuse me, because I know that R's are not pronounced. Rafael, he's a in boxing they would call him a journeyman fighter. He gets some wins, but unfortunately, the dude gets some losses. He's used as a litmus test to see if the younger fighter, the prospect fighter, should be advanced or should he or hey, he's not ready for this type of level yet. So, Rafael Santos also could be viewed as a tune-up fight. Hence Cody Garbrandt when he knocked him out a couple years ago. So to me, this is kind of like a do or die situation for Rafael Santos in the UFC. If he loses this, I just feel like he won't. There's no title run in his future at bantamweight. Maybe he might need to move up to featherweight and see if he can have a second win of a career. But he has taken quite a few losses, and it's unfortunate because he's not a terrible fighter. He's not like he walks up and he gets KO'd in the first round every time. No, but
He's well rounded.
yeah, he's well rounded. He just loses like all of the big fights that he has, he loses them all. But like all of the non-big fights he has, he wins some of them. So I feel like this is kind of interesting to see what's going to happen with him. Um, Wildline bonus Saeed Nurmagomedov. I'm interested to see him. I think that dude is a killer, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he does in this fight. Now, the fight night main event from like what 2 weeks ago, Nikita Krylov and Ryan Spann.
Yes.
I'm very interested in that because I know Nikita Krylov, he fell ill, so because of that, that fight got canceled. But now they have a chance to actually do it again. This fight is very important for both fighters because the winner gets to move on and start fighting top contenders at light heavyweight, which right now the division is so thin, you could probably get a title shot off of one or two. Yeah, you could get shot up.
Yeah.
So this is a big fight for either man because the man that wins this fight, the fighter that wins this fight, is going to be they're looking at a good situation in the future. They're going to get they might even be in a title eliminator. Who knows? You know what I mean? So that's how I feel about that fight. Alexander Volkov fight. Alexander Volkov, he's good, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really too excited for this fight because if Romanov wins, it'll be like, well, he beat Volkov, which is a name, but I would like to see Romanov fight another heavyweight with a name. And if Volkov wins, well, it'll be like, okay, well, Volkov beat a guy that doesn't have a name, and he usually does. He usually does that. I would like to see Volkov beat a guy with a name. So I don't think this fight is particularly my most interesting one, but I'll mention it because it does have Volkov in it, who is a top 10 heavyweight.
Sure.
Then of course the main event. I my prediction for the main event is I think Marab is going to win. I think he's going to win a decision. I don't think this fight is going to be exciting. I think he's going to nullify Peter's striking, especially since Marab's like close training partner is the bantamweight champion, Aljamain Sterling. So I'm pretty sure Aljamain is giving him all the tips and all the shit that all the tendencies that Peter does, and that's going to be an advantage. I think Marab is going to win by decision. He's going to mainly grapple his way to a win. So
Yeah, I agree. Like what you're saying about that fight, especially. Like, I think that Marab is going to go in and beat Piotr Jan. I just see him like being able to. I feel like he can do what he needs to do to win this fight. But that being said, I feel like this fight is going to be really close.
okay,
I, yeah, I don't think it's going to be like necessarily like ultra like dominant from either fighter. Like I think Piotr Jan's looking to come back and like win, and I think Marab's looking to stamp his name as like one of the better bantamweights. And I wouldn't be surprised honestly if Aljamain moves up and he tries to take the vacant title at some point if he still has the belt.
I
So
think that's my bad. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go
what's up?
ahead. No, I was going to say I think exactly that's probably what the plan is because Aljamain's been hitting at featherweight for a little bit now, and I think it's because he's trying to uh, be in a position to vacate the title so Marab can take the title.
Right.
Since because apparently those two are close, so he's not going to fight his homeboy, and I get that. So I feel like the way I see it, if Marab does win as I predicted, honestly, he's probably going to be next in line for the title. And if Aljo does beat Henry Cejudo, I can see Aljamain moving up. I don't even see him staying around unless the Sean O'Malley fight is going to be guaranteed next. Then Marab might have to chill out for a little bit while Aljamain takes that. But honestly, Aljamain, if he loses to Cejudo, oh, he's for sure going up.
Oh
But
yeah.
if he wins against Cejudo, he could stay for one more, and I think that's the O'Malley fight. But if he's not going to get that O'Malley fight, he's moving up. I don't think Aljamain is too interested in fighting Chito Vera.
Now, this is random, and we've kind of finished talking about the fight night from next weekend. I was just thinking about it as we were talking about UFC 285. Like, who do you think Cyril Gane has a better chance against? Sergey Pavlovich or Sergey Spivak?
Oh, honestly, I'm gonna say Pavlich. If that's not how you pronounce his name, I apologize. But I'm gonna say Pavlich because it seems like Pavlich is more of the striker between the two. Spivak seems like he's more of the grappler, and unfortunately, right now it looks like God's kryptonite in this division is somebody who can grapple.
Yeah.
So, I'm not. Maybe a Cyril God versus Alexander Volkov, if he wins, that might be a good fight. It might be the right tune-up type of fight for him. You know what I mean? I think what needs to happen now is he needs to take a fight where he can win. I'm not saying give him a super easy opponent, some guy making his UFC debut, but I'm talking about give him somebody where like it is kind of tailored for him to win. So this way he can gain his confidence back. If he throw right in there with somebody who's a grappler, like for example, Curtis Blades, he's going to get beat again. Because Curtis Blades, I think he's going to wrestle him a lot more than John probably wanted to wrestle him. I think John just took advantage of a vulnerability. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah, I think if he fights Curtis Blades, man, like Curtis Blades is getting better on the feet. Like he's getting better on the feet with every fight.
Yeah.
That is not the fight that I would want to see Cyril Gane take right now because like while he could knock out Curtis Blades because he's showing himself to be, capable of being knocked out.
Yeah.
He's not just going to stand there and let him hit him. Like, you know what I mean? He's not.
Right.
If anything, I could see him treating him like Alexander Volkov. Hey, look, y'all better get ready for a boring fight because I'm about to take him down and work him.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for listeners?
Besides following us on the Highly Wise Podcast on Instagram, Advise Highly on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube at the Highly Advised Podcast. We appreciate all the listeners and all the viewers. Now, I just want to say one last thing before we cut the episode off is I know listeners there's a kind of stark difference on our approach to the MMA versus the normal podcast episodes, which is coming back soon, by the way. Well, we're working through some things with that. It's for the MMA episodes, we're trying to be more knowledgeable, more professional about the stuff like that, because we want you listeners and viewers to kind of take us seriously when we speak about these fights. Not saying that we won't joke around a little bit here and there, but it won't be as often as like the normal podcast episodes, because those are a bit more lenient, laid back, and leisure. With the MMA ones, we want it to be fun, but we also want it to be like, hey, these guys kind of know what they're talking about. They watch the fights enough. These guys are not like fucking idiots. So that's for that, listeners. If you guys are wondering, oh, where the humor went and all that, the humor didn't go nowhere. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, listeners, I don't got anything for y'all. We'll be back next week because there's more fights coming on next week, and we gotta preview some more things. It might not be like this every week. It might not be like this for every MMA podcast, but for the month of March, this is now our March Madness.
yes.
We got some shit to handle. We got some shit to talk about, and we will be back next week. Listeners, have a good one. Peace.